All right, I want to go through and review Dogehouse. And this is not like me trying to tear it down in any way. I just want to point out some potential issues I see. And then I want to go ahead and put a bunch of opportunities I see where Clubhouse is kind of falling short. Twitter Spaces will probably fall short as well because as far as I can tell, it's just a copy of Clubhouse. And, you know, that creates an opportunity for somebody to come in, make something better, make something that people like to use more. And that's really, at the end of the day, what is going to make something the next Facebook. Starting out first, looking at the design, one thing I see is that Dogehouse is first being designed for desktop. In the Figma designs, I didn't even see like a responsive version. And of course, I'm sure it's going to be responsive. But this to me, by prioritizing the full screen desktop app version of, or just desktop in general version of this website, that is limiting its potential for virality because the majority of people nowadays are using their phones, whether it's the browser on their phones or apps, right? That's just a little hiccup to me. A little bit bigger problem is that Dogehouse isn't that differentiated in my opinion. To me, it seems very, very similar to Clubhouse, right? The obvious exception is that there's an opportunity for monetization, right? And Ben Awad, as a creator, clearly wants to give tools to creators to be able to make money. He's been able to do that with his YouTube channel, I'm sure. And so he sees the value in that. Monetization is only useful if there are users, right? If there are people who are listening, and that's how, like, you know, he references Twitch, and obviously it's the viewers on Twitch that donate to the streamers, which is how monetization is possible. But why would listeners come to Dogehouse instead of Clubhouse? Again, if there's no listeners, there's no monetization. So there's only two reasons I can think of why people would want to come to Dogehouse instead of Clubhouse. Now, number one is because people that they follow, people they already like on Twitter or YouTube or Instagram or whatever, are now on Dogehouse, right? And so they say, oh, I'll come along and listen. But if users aren't on Dogehouse, why would creators come to it? And if creators aren't on Dogehouse, why would users come? It's kind of a chicken and an egg problem. And this is, you know, the network effect that something like Clubhouse has. And the second reason you might think of that somebody might use Dogehouse instead of Clubhouse is because Dogehouse is so much more open. And I'm not just talking open source. Clubhouse right now, it's only on iOS. So if you have Android or you want to use it on your computer, you're out of luck. Dogehouse is going to be open to everybody, right? Anybody can use it. It's going to be on the web, free and easy to use. And Clubhouse is also invite only. So that kind of limits the number of people who can use it. Whereas again, Dogehouse, anyone can use. So that's a great opportunity. And Ben, you know, he talked about this in his video where he said, you know, right now you have to strike while the proverbial iron is hot because Twitter Spaces is going to be coming out in the future. Right now they're still in beta. It's very closed. And Clubhouse is still, you know, invite only on iOS. So this is the time to make it happen, right? The thing about that is that Twitter Spaces has been confirmed to be releasing next month, sometime in April. And they're going to be releasing right in the Twitter app, on Android, on iOS. And so, you know, we previously talked about how, you know, if you don't have creators, you need users, all that stuff, like you need both. Twitter isn't going to have as big of a problem with that because it's going to be built right into the Twitter app. And obviously Twitter already has a lot of dedicated users. And so it's going to be easier for them to compete with Clubhouse in like who's who being on the app, right? So that means that you basically have a month's window until Twitter Spaces opens to not only build a user base large enough and robust enough to be competitive to Twitter Spaces when it launches, but also to finish building it and to implement the features you're looking for to the point where it's at least ready to be user-facing, right? Where people can look at it and be like, oh, this is like a good normal app, right? Which obviously is in progress, but it isn't even done yet. And so that's a very short window to do a lot of stuff and build a substantial audience, right? And so I'm not sure that that window is big enough to be able to really capitalize on that advantage. But that's okay because I do think there's a lot of opportunity to compete with both of those Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse and win. So I want to talk about some of those kind of opportunities where Clubhouse falls short, and I think Twitter Spaces will also fall short. But before I do that, I want to just summarize, the basic issues. So in summary, the premise of Dogehouse, right, is that monetization and access for all will draw users to it and make it the next Facebook. In reality, these features are somewhat short-lived and unreliable for competing with the two big players already essentially making the same product. If this is just a product for fun, for Ben's community to work together on, that's great. But if he really does want it to be the next Facebook, as it is, I don't see it happening. But I think by adding differentiating features that people love, that make it a better experience, Dogehouse actually can stand out from the competitors and deliver more value to users and become the viral hit that we all, want it to be. Dogehouse, come on, that's got to be viral. That's got to go to the moon. So let's talk about some problems of Clubhouse and how that kind of creates opportunities for Dogehouse or any competitor that wants to come in to do it better and make a better product, attract users. So my experience on Clubhouse when I first joined it was that the rooms just didn't really strike my fancy, right? I was, first of all, inundated with way too many topics. You get on and there's like all these topics and you're like, I don't even really understand how this app works yet. I don't know what topics I want. And then there's all these clubs, but what exactly clubs are and how they work isn't clear. A lot of them just have like hypey names and you don't really know what following them's going to do. And I'm still actually kind of unclear on this, right? I follow Startup Club, which is one of the biggest clubs on Clubhouse. And that's been really good because I'm interested in startups, and basically that's like following the topic startup, essentially. They just have a bunch of random startup stuff. But other than that, like the other clubs, like I've followed some and I don't really understand what the point of them is. And so that's not good. You want it to be very clear, right? So I actually think that limiting the number of topics to a few broad, interesting topics so that users, when they first get on, aren't just inundated with all these topics they don't know what to do with would be really good. And then making clubs much more intentional as to how they function, however that may look, would be really helpful. And I think that could potentially help kind of give you more interesting things without feeling like you need to get so niche right away, right? I mean, TikTok is a great example of this, right? You get on TikTok, you don't even tell them anything. They just start showing you content, you start scrolling through, and they learn as you go. Obviously, that requires some algorithmic solutions that may not be feasible yet for something like Clubhouse or Dogehouse, but still, I think there's a lot to learn from that experience. Now, number two, and I think this is one of the biggest opportunities for something like Dogehouse to just annihilate Clubhouse, right? Which is, as I've used Clubhouse, I've realized there's a lot of potential in this format of audio and making rooms and letting people be involved, but it's kind of unclear how any room in particular is supposed to work. So, for example, like I think Clubhouse would be a great platform for debates between like different high-profile people, like influencers or whatever, in any space, right? Debates on different things. You could even have like two prominent coding influencers debating, different languages or whatever it is, the benefits and the cons. But you don't really see that happening on Clubhouse. And I think part of the reason is because it's not structured really for a debate. You feel like you have to include other people just because you can. Really, it's a neutral third-party platform where you can have a discussion with somebody you disagree with without having to invite them on your podcast and kind of platform them in that way, or invite them on your YouTube channel. You can have it on a neutral third-party platform. If you design to help facilitate these different kinds of conversations that can happen, that would be a huge advantage. And this could be as simple as just adding tags to the rooms to show what kind they are. You could have a debate. You could have an Ask Me Anything room. You could have a hangout room. You could have a town hall. Just by having those tags, it'd become much more clear, okay, I'm not going to be involved in this conversation because it's a debate between these two people. Or, oh, I'm going to go ask a question. Or it just provide a lot of clarity and a lot of different expansion of use cases for how people could kind of see themselves using this app. I mean, even podcasts, you could have a podcast label, and then people who are already podcasting on all these different platforms could come to Dogehouse and they could host their podcast there, and then they could record it there and have it for later. And it'd be very clear to people, hey, I'm just listening live to this podcast. So that is a place where I think there could just be a huge amount of value brought to both users who it's made clear to what they're actually listening to, and creators who it's clear what they can do on the platform and what kind of conversations they can engage in. And eventually, as time progresses, you could go from just having those be tags to actually changing how the rooms work, right? Perhaps if it's an Ask Me Anything, there could be a time limit for people who want to ask questions, because sometimes people just go on and the users have to cut them off. It's really awkward on Clubhouse. But if it was clear how much time they had and the app enforced that, that could make things a lot less awkward, a lot more intuitive. For debates, maybe it could even show the amount of time each person has spoken to show if somebody's dominating the debate, taking up too much time, whatever it is. So I think there could be a lot of really interesting things you could do with just simply labeling the type of conversation that's happening. Now, another issue I kind of alluded to a little bit is the unknown quality of users, right? Anybody can raise their hand in a room. The speaker can decide to invite them up, but they have very little information to go off of. All they have is a profile picture and whatever the person has put in their bio, and who they're following, how many people they're following, stuff like that. It's not a lot. You don't know what quality of person you're inviting up. So it could be really interesting to somehow incorporate some sort of feedback system. Think kind of like Reddit, how people can award people, or you can see how much karma somebody has. If somebody makes a good comment, perhaps other people in the audience could reward that, and that could be seen on their profile. I think there's just ways that you could incentivize good behavior and kind of start to learn the quality of different people on the app, different contributors. And that would be helpful, to people deciding who to have as a co-host, or people deciding, or even just Dogehouse deciding who to let start a club or start a room. These different ways of being able to just have community feedback on individual users would be really good. And I think it would solve another problem, or at least contribute to solving another problem that I see as really annoying on Clubhouse, which is just the fakeness that comes there, right? There's a lot of a LinkedIn feeling. I mean, there's tons of like for like groups where people just are silent and go or follow each other on Instagram so they can get more followers. It's just scammy, And even Jason, who is an angel investor that Ben has talked to, and he mentioned in his video, has just recently had a conversation on YouTube on his podcast where he talked with Coffee Break about all the scams that go on Clubhouse already. This is still a closed, invite-only app in beta, and already there's all these scammers and fake gurus that are really predatory there. And being able to have some sort of community based feedback on users could hopefully help cut down on these predatory guru type people and help really positive and actually quality people rise to the top. Because right now there's just no way to really tell on Clubhouse. And finally, I think this is a big one, which is there's a lack of integration on Clubhouse with more established platforms. Instagram, for example, when they were early on, a big part of the way that they gained a lot of traction was by allowing people to cross-post their Instagram posts to Twitter and Facebook. And when they did that, it would say, posted from Instagram. And people on these established platforms like Twitter and Facebook would see the posted from Instagram thing, and they'd be like, what's Instagram? And that really helped Instagram go viral. Now, Clubhouse currently, they kind of discourage recording rooms. It's not totally unallowed, but they certainly don't encourage it, and they don't make it easy. And so you don't see a lot of people doing it. And when they do it, it's kind of ugly. If you go watch YouTube videos of Clubhouse talk, it's usually low quality audio, and it just doesn't, it's not made for YouTube. You know what I mean? It's not made to be shared. And so if something like Dogehouse could make it easy to record and share high quality content, then you'd see Dogehouse clips all over the internet. You could stream your Dogehouse room on Twitch, or just all over the internet. That would help it go viral and give it such a huge advantage over something like Clubhouse. So that's just my opinion, obviously, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for Dogehouse to differentiate itself, add some features that make it stand out. And then I think the time issue actually doesn't become as big of a deal, where you're rushing in the next month to try and build a giant user base before Twitter comes in with its giant hammer and just demolishes you. I think by actually being really thoughtful about how people use this and what people want, you could stand out whenever, you start to gain traction, and people would come just because it's a better experience. So those are some ways I think it could be improved. If you disagree with me, I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, thanks for listening. I'll catch you later.